Apple's new 13-inch M4 iPad Pro is a beast, but the only problem is that you can get the 12.9-inch iPad Air M2 for only $800, saving you $500. So in this video, I'm gonna answer the question of if it's actually worth spending the extra money for the M4 iPad Pro 13-inch, or should you just save it and go with the Air? Now, the funny thing about the iPad Air is that it is now heavier and thicker than the new iPad Pro. It's actually 1 millimeter thicker and almost 1/10 of a pound heavier, and I could actually feel it in my hands with the iPad Pro being a lot nicer. Now on the back, you could definitely see a difference where the iPad Pro looks more pro with that basically etched out metal for the camera bump. That honestly looks a little bit weird, but it does have the LiDAR, it has the extra flash that the iPad Air doesn't have, and an extra ambient light sensor for basically adjusting the flash. Now, of course, the iPad Air does have Touch ID built into the power button, which is pretty cool, but the iPad Pro, I'd say, is a big step up because it has the Face ID sensors, which auto unlocks no matter which orientation you're in. And just like before, both of them have USB-C ports, but the one on the iPad Pro does support Thunderbolt speeds, so it's a lot more capable. And finally, they both have 4 different speaker grills on both sides, but the iPad Air only has landscape stereo, so only 2 of them run, while the iPad Pro, all 4 of them go. So let's do a quick speaker test. And wow, that was a big difference. The iPad Pro just destroyed the Air, even though Apple said that the new 13-inch iPad Air speakers have 2 times louder bass. It doesn't sound like it when you compare it to the Pro because it's louder and the bass is better, just so much better. So with that said, there are already more than 5 advantages with the Pro. It's thinner, it's lighter, it's got Face ID, it has Thunderbolt, and it has much better speakers. But now let's get into comparing the displays. Even though Apple's calling this a 13-inch display on the iPad Air, it's actually the same 12.9-inch display that the M2 iPad Pro used to have, so that means the bezels are ever so slightly thinner on the 13-inch iPad Pro. But the big difference is the display technology. The iPad Air has a traditional LCD display that goes up to 600 nits, which is actually a little bit of a bonus compared to the regular 11-inch iPad Air, which is limited to 500. But the new M4 iPad Pro has a Tandem OLED display, which goes up to 1600 nits of peak brightness, or 1000 for standard brightness, which is absolutely insane. And looking at it side by side, you can tell that the iPad Pro is a lot brighter, and you're gonna be seeing this all the time, whether you're outside or just basic use. It's a lot nicer. And now looking at HDR video quality, you can see just how much brighter the iPad Pro is with those extra nits. You can see that all the colors pop more. You can see this logo is a lot brighter, looks really dull here and kind of gray on the iPad Air. Here you can see just how nice it is to see, let's say, that waterfall a lot brighter. The contrast levels, the colors, everything is popping really nicely on this Tandem OLED display. It might be difficult for you guys to see it on camera, but to my eyes, the Tandem OLED is just so much better. But where you really see the difference is when you turn the lights off or down in a dim environment. And here I can see a mind-blowing difference where the entire display on the iPad Air is gray. So let me play it for you to show you these differences with the fireworks. As you can see, the OLED iPad Pro looks absolutely amazing. All the dark areas are pitch black because the LEDs themselves are turned off completely, whereas the entire backlight on the LCD iPad Air is all turned on. It just looks like a gray, dull mess compared to the beautiful Tandem OLED, which, by the way, compared to Mini LED, we did a video on it, but you cannot see any blooming effect whatsoever because of the way it works with OLED. It looks absolutely beautiful. So hopefully you guys can see the difference here. And not only do you get those beautiful contrast ratio with the Tandem OLED, but the fireworks themselves are even brighter than on the LCD. It's just a world of a difference if you're watching movies, or especially if you're wanting to do HDR video editing or photo editing, whatever. You can't do it on the LCD iPad Air. Now that right there adds another major win for the iPad Pro in terms of whether it's worth actually spending $500 more, but don't forget about the fact that with that extra $500, it includes double the storage. So the iPad Pro has 256 gigs at SSD compared to 128. So don't forget that difference. But on top of all those differences, there are two more major display differences. The iPad Pro comes with ProMotion technology up to 120 Hertz refresh rate. Basically, every second, the display refreshes what it shows 120 times compared to the iPad Air, which is still limited and locked in at 60 Hertz all the time. So the iPad Pro is basically twice as smooth. So in this slow motion footage, you can see just how much smoother the iPad Pro looks. And another benefit is being able to play games at up to 120 FPS compared to 60, which means you get to use more of the chip's potential performance for gaming. But the second advantage is that the Tandem OLED display has a much faster response time of only 5 milliseconds compared to 54 milliseconds on the LCD panel. That's over twice as fast for the iPad Pro. So in the slow motion footage, you can see that the text is really sharp even while moving the display. So even though they both support the brand new Apple Pencil Pro, it actually looks and feels a lot more smooth on the iPad Pro with ProMotion and the faster response time of the display. So you might get the new Pencil for the iPad Air, but feel like it's still a little choppy and unresponsive. And then another advantage on top of all of that is that the new iPad Pro supports the new second generation Magic Keyboard, which in my opinion is a lot better. First of all, the iPad sits further away and it has this better angle, as you can see right here, where it kind of shows higher towards my face, whereas the old one is limited. By the way, the iPad Air supports the old iPad Pro's Magic Keyboard. Yes, it's the same one, which means that you could get a better deal on Amazon because it's been around for so long. But with the new one, there are so many advantages. First of all, the built-in pass-through charging, the USB-C port and the hinge, it's faster on the iPad Pro. The new Magic Keyboard has the aluminum premium feel and design, which now allows there to be a much better real haptic feedback trackpad, so much better than that weird diving board design of the original trackpad. The keys themselves feel a lot clickier and nicer, no longer as mushy, not requiring as much force. And the biggest deal is that the new Magic Keyboard has the entire function row, so you can very easily adjust all of your different settings. You get a real escape button, you get all your media control, so you don't have to lift your hands off of the keyboard to adjust it like you have to do with the iPad Air. And the best part of all is that Apple didn't raise the price. It's still $350 MSRP for the new Magic Keyboard compared to the old one, so that's a nice bonus. And the nice thing on both of these iPads is that they both have the new landscape camera. You can see right here in the center on both of them, but there is a good chance that the microphones on the iPad Pro sound better, so let's test that. This is the microphone quality on the M2 iPad Air. And this is the microphone quality on the new 13-inch M4 iPad Pro. Let me know which one's better down below. And the last thing we're gonna finish off with is the performance comparison. Of course, the iPad Air has the M2 chip from the previous iPad Pro, and we have the brand new M4 chip, which now runs at 4.4 gigahertz compared to 3.47 on the iPad Air. They both have the same 8 gigs of RAM, so let's do the CPU benchmark. We got our scores, and the M4 iPad Pro scored 3759, which is about 43% faster in terms of single core, which is super impressive, and it's about 32% faster in terms of multi-core performance, so there's definitely a big difference between the two. So with that said, let's test Speedometer 3.0, which is gonna basically give us the difference in performance for web browsing snappiness. And there you go, it looks like the M4 chip is about 26% more snappy for web browsing. And now let's move over to the graphics side of things with Geekbench 6. It looks like the M4 iPad Pro is getting 54,000 compared to almost 42,000. That's basically 25% higher in terms of graphics performance with the same 10 GPU cores. But what I'm really curious to see is if the M4 iPad Pro in the very thin chassis is gonna be thermal throttling from overheating compared to the old M2 chip. So let's run 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme Stress Test. And holy smokes, guys, we have our results from the 20-minute stress test. And it turns out that the worst score, the lowest loop score on the M4 iPad Pro is slightly higher than the best score on the M2 iPad Air, 6492 compared to 6402. That is insane. But in terms of the peak score, the M4 is 36% faster or higher FPS. And the crazy thing is the actual stability or the difference between the best loop and the lowest loop is higher on the M4, 74.6% stability compared to 66, which means that it actually thermal throttles or reduces performance less than the old M2 Air, which is just incredible. So impressive for the M4. So with all that said, is it worth spending the extra $500 for the 13-inch M4 iPad Pro? Well, first of all, seeing as if you match the storage on both of them, it's actually a $400 difference. So do we have enough differences or upgrades? I think we absolutely do, especially with that much better display tech, the higher performance, the ProMotion, the better performance or snappiness of the Apple Pencil Pro, the thinness, the less weight. Basically, there are so many advantages, Thunderbolt, the much better speakers, that I do think that it's worth spending the extra cash on the M4 iPad Pro if you can. Now, if you're very limited by your budget, the iPad Air is gonna let you get a huge display for only $800, which is a really nice advantage for this iPad. But if you have the money, I would definitely recommend the iPad Pro because you're gonna be seeing and feeling those differences every day, and you're basically gonna be future-proofed in terms of resale value since it has the M4 chip, since it has the new design, the new Tandem OLED. I don't think there's gonna be a big enough worthy upgrade in the next 5 to 6 years. This is one of those generational upgrade opportunities, so if you can afford it, I would recommend it. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and definitely check out one of those 2 videos right over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.